Guess what? Sunday Sanctuary is produced by a non-profit, which makes perfect sense, right? And it's also quite fun because you never know where the money's going to come from. So this is your invitation to join that fun by supporting this kaupapa and helping to share something you love with even more people looking for soul-nourishing spiritual conversations. It's simple. You can choose between a one-off donation or become a regular supporter and help Sam and I keep making Sunday Sanctuary. To give now, head to our website, sundaysanctuary.nz. Kia ora, and thank you.
Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
Tēnā koutou, this is Sunday Sanctuary Extra. And in the episode, Am I My Brother's Keeper?, I sat down and spoke with Professor Niki Harré on her book, The Calling, a year exploring what the secular world can learn from religion, which is released March 12th, 2026. And the conversation was so interesting, Sam and I thought, let's share the full interview. So, enjoy. Niki Harré, lovely to have you here.
Tēnā koe.
Professor of Psychology at the University of Auckland.
Correct.
And secular priest. Is it a title you wear, or is it a project that was?
It's a project that was.
Nice.
It was always time limited.
Okay, brilliant. And partly the reason we're talking today is because you have published this book, The Calling, a year exploring what the secular world can learn from religion. And the project wasn't really just about thinking and reading and talking. The project feels to me, from what I've discovered so far reading your book, to be very immersive, very real world. Can you tell me a little bit about what led you to do this and how it all began?
So it's interesting that when you said to me, secular priest, a project that was or is, I'm thinking I contradicted myself immediately, because one of the main motives for this project was I had this thought inside me that I already was a priest. And I'm not entirely sure what that meant, but it was something about wanting to talk about the human experience in a way that was really authentic, to relate to other people and invite them into relationship, to listen really carefully, to try and understand other people, to acknowledge both that we're in a complex system we can't control, but that we can play a role in the lives of those around us right now in the place we're in. And I'm a university academic, so I get to try on a lot of hats. And I had a year's research and study leave coming up. Yes.
Perfect. 1 year of research and study.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yes. So I thought, well, I can try out this priest gig. And I'd sort of been working towards quite similar ideas. I was very interested in values and values-based practice. I've always been interested in an orientation to the common good and what that means. I was yearning for humility, which I felt wasn't very present in the secular institutions I was part of, but sensed was part of the church. So I had this idea that I could contribute. Because I'm a community psychologist, I'm always about trying stuff out. Like, I'm about working with people. So if there's an idea that might work or be valuable, I don't want to just write about it. I want to give it a go. So it was just obvious, wasn't it, Petra, that I would therefore try out being a secular priest.
So that seems entirely obvious
Thanks.
to me. And do it with a sense of detail and academic rigor that I am impressed with. Like, I am holding the result of your year's project, and it's beautifully done. The stories are interesting, and the note taking seems deep. And you led secular services, and your sermons that became provocations, that's what you decided to call them, they are really thoughtfully constructed and delivered. What was my point? My point is, when we're talking about a secular priest, your start point, therefore, is what? I know it's atheist, but can you describe it?
You mean my sort of philosophy,
Yes.
worldview, those kinds of things?
Yes, your spirituality, your start point.
Yeah, so I was raised atheist,
Yes.
but with
Actively?
parents.
inheritedly?
Well, I was born in
absence of?
1961. Do the maths on how old I am. So I was born in 1961. I lived as a child for a long time in Suva for 6 years of my childhood, and in Dunedin and Napier as well. So Christianity was quite alive at that time. So my parents weren't Christians, but it was around. We probably said prayers at school. I can't remember it explicitly, but I definitely knew Bible stories. I knew about Easter and Christmas and the significance. So I was in that sense immersed within a Christian culture, if you like, just
Indeed.
the way we all are.
We all are.
And I did have a very brief time of considering myself Christian, which I describe in the book when I was about 17. And then my grandmother asked me if I really believed that Mary was a virgin when she had Jesus. And I said yes, knowing I was lying. And I do wonder if that was the era in which you had to believe. I think things have moved on quite a bit from then, but I was really caught up in the sense that Christianity is primarily about the belief in certain doctrines. I don't think that anymore. So my own worldview, and I think all part of that, part of the way I was brought up, was always an orientation outwards, like life is to be of service, if that doesn't sound too pretentious. Like what else is there than contributing to what is around you? So I always wanted to be in life in that kind of way. And then I increasingly was drawn to sort of images and symbolism, which sometimes I'd find out later had Christian origins, like the infinite game concept by James Cass, in which he suggests that life has two kinds of games: the infinite game in which the purpose is to keep the game in play, and finite games in which the purpose is to win. Now, as soon as I heard him say that, I heard it on a podcast initially, I knew that the infinite game was what I was trying to do. And it wasn't until sometime later that I realised he was a philosopher and a theologian. So I was sort of bumping into concepts that had come out of religious and Christian framings and finding them appealing. But there's still the elements of the story that are really strange to me and that I couldn't identify with. So I was hoping to brush off the intellectually troublesome bits and put into practice some of the incredible kaupapa, the humility, the concern for others, and so on.
I want to, the next question I want to ask is, how did you go? But before I do that, it's so interesting that you're parting with the concept of potentially becoming a Christian was over a moment where you betrayed yourself. Like, rather than parting from yourself, you parted from the ideology of that. So the betrayal kind of activated that. I think that's pretty interesting, that we might know when we're being and behaving and acting with integrity or not, and that sometimes to survive we will, we will betray ourselves because in the interests of, I think children will betray what they think is right and wrong at times to stay within a family system. But it's a fascinating investigation into what you're saying were intellectual difficulties, and then also some resonant arrivals of symbolism or values or purpose, service. I think services. When I spoke with Jacinda Ardern on grey areas, the one of the phrases was, can we make service sexy again? Because it's so integral, I think, to being human in a healthy way. But let's talk more about your project.
Yes.
You decided to sort of formalise this idea of service and the seeking of humility and common good, and become a secular priest, self-designated, I suspect, I guess.
Correct.
Yes, excellent.
Yes. Nobody would ordain me.
and create services that you invited people. Shout out to Mark Pearson, who I know, for his, I guess, support of your mahi. what did you discover? And like, can you tell us a few little snippets? I mean, I've got some.
Shall I
notes,
describe what the?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so the Secular Priest Project, in terms of the work that I did, had a number of components. One was attending a Christian church and reading, so that was a learning part of it. But the doing part of it was that I set up a website. I had services on every 2 or 3 Sundays a month, followed by, on the Wednesday, an online service that did the same talk, provocation, sermon as the previous Sunday. So those were a regular event throughout the year. I offered what I called personal conversations, which was people were able to come in and have a conversation with me about anything that was troubling them or that they wanted to discuss. I saw that as a sort of priestly conversation, if you like. I'd already had many conversations like that with students and other people, heavily involved with youth environmental movements. So I thought they would be akin to that. And I also offered ceremonies. So I did a course at the Celebrant School, training as a celebrant, and was really keen to do secular ceremonies, but I only did one in the end, which was a baby naming ceremony. So that was the active part of the project, the outward-facing part. But I also took upon myself to have 3 vows, and they were simplicity, hospitality, and pause. So for the entire year, I bought nothing unnecessary. Simplicity. So necessary was defined as food, things like, painkillers, dishwashing liquid. If something broke that I needed, like my cell phone, I would have been allowed to replace it. I don't think anything like that happened during the year. So I was pretty much only shopping at the supermarket. I also wore a uniform. So I was wearing only black and grey clothes for the year. I had to construct that, which was a bit of a carry-on and kind of weird to be buying all these clothes for the sake of being simple, but I did it. Okay. And then my 3rd vow was pause. So I really wanted to find a way to have regular times outside the flow of life. And that vow took quite a long time to settle because I wanted to pray, but I didn't know who or what to pray to. I was determined not to meditate, but in the end did end up discovering meditation and develop what was essentially a meditation routine.
Yeah, which you referred to as centering prayer sometimes.
Centering prayer was the book that kicked me off in that direction. Yeah. Okay. And I run anyway, so I also stopped listening to podcasts when I run and started observing the light. So all these ways to just introduce that regular gap between me and what I was experiencing.
Brilliant. I wonder if you could define prayer as a regular gap. Like I wonder if prayer could, like we have such a almost cartoon concept of prayer, I think, as a person on their knees with their hands in a prayer position speaking. It may extend to a person sitting somewhere listening. What you're describing feels more robust. It's running. It's physically, literally pausing mentally, emotionally, and with your body, and then also, sort of intersecting with other elements of nature.
Yeah,
like
that's
light.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. I think so much of this is about some kind of perspective, because being able to be outward focused, which is really what I saw as a central mission of the project. It's like, this sounds brutal, but it's almost like get over yourself, which is not exactly how I thought about it. It's more look outward, try and overcome your ego, all of those kind of just very standard spiritual messages, really.
And in saying that, are you saying get over yourself, Niki?
I think I am definitely saying that to myself. Yeah. And I also see so much pain in people because they've made themselves the centre of their lives. Because it's actually incredibly painful to be the centre of your life. It's such a, I find it so sad. I see young people sometimes with such a need to find out what their passion is. And if you're a little bit older, you know it doesn't really work like that for most people. You bumble through doing things and you discover things that in unexpected places. But that self-conscious need to make a life, I think, is too much to ask of a poor, fragile human being.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you use the word sad. I would see it as just immense pressure.
Yeah.
An immense pressure to be the source of creation of your entire world and being and success and everything. And we are not in control of all the elements by any stretch of the imagination. So there's this, and if every single person is centered on themselves and their life, it's very hard to cope with dealing with all of these non-interlocking globes, like what's the porous space around us. Like I think midlife for me is definitely a lesson in the humility of, and everything will happen, like things just like the fly in our recording go away, but he or she may or may not go away. Can I dip back to your vows? I'm fascinated by the vow of humility that you chose to
hospitality. Oh, I didn't explain that one.
No.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, okay. So hospitality was, again, it's the idea of focusing outwards. Yeah. But I did start with very low-level hospitality, which was just greeting people I saw on the street or at the supermarket and not avoiding them. I think I'm an introvert. I find being with people is causes me, it's a task that I have to put a lot into.
Yes.
And so I am a bit of an avoider of people on the street. If I can duck around the corner without them seeing me, I'm not impolite, I will often do so. Walk down the next aisle of the supermarket because there's somebody I might have to say hello to, exactly the opposite of my husband who will, approach people. So my hospitality vow to start with was simply that I would greet people. And that actually took quite a lot of self-conscious effort to maintain. Again, as I said, I run. So I'm running around my suburbs. So I'm quite often running into people and I would always say hello. And I got into the habit of saying hello to everyone and it started to just be what I did. I was one of those people that was open and friendly.
Hi.
Yeah. Just that. Just that.
Yeah.
Just that. Or if it was somebody I knew, I would stop and see if they wanted a conversation. I mean, I wasn't pushy.
No.
But I was just really determined to be focusing outwards. And it's interesting because I think maybe part of an introversion, or certainly part of the way I live my life, is I'm very organised. Every moment of every day has a plan. And so often hospitality disrupts that plan.
Undies.
Yeah. So somebody rings you either with an invitation or a problem or whatever, and you wanted to be thinking about something else for the next 5 minutes. So to me, the essence of hospitality, as I meant it, is you reorient to be with them rather than to stick with your original plan. Now, there's a limit to that, of course. I totally get that you can't live constantly bombarded with what other people, if you like, setting the agenda every minute.
You can, but it's
exhausting.
Yes.
I would imagine. But I knew I went too far in the opposite direction, and I knew a priest is meant to be available. So one of the things that intrigued me about the hospitality vow, and perhaps why I settled on it, is I had read about celibacy, which is of course a vow for many priests and for nuns, as being the route to hospitality. Now, it's an interesting one if you think about it for a bit, because to me the essence of celibacy is that you don't have children. That's its most important feature. And as soon as you have children, you have a clear centre of people who are more important than anything else. They just foot straight into it. And so if you don't have children, you are sort of automatically, at least theoretically, potentially open to other people. And then, of course, an intimate sexual domestic relationship can also have a similar kind of pull. So hospitality, I've got 3 children, I'm married. So hospitality seemed like a vow that had some of those features of celibacy that are important, I think, to being a minister, a religious minister of some type.
What did your vow of hospitality reveal to you over the year?
Well, partly my heart stretched in the way that I'd hoped it would, so I became more able to do this in a natural way. I also discovered huge gratitude for when people wanted to be with me. I mean, that's such an amazing thing for somebody to want to talk something through with you, even to want something practical from you. It's like, wow, I exist. Here's people out there noticing me and seeing a place for me in their lives. So I was able to really reframe that act of hospitality. But it's still something I struggle with because I still have that introvert's need for long stretches of time alone. One of the things during that year, because I was not as involved in the nitty-gritty of daily university life as usual, is I had hospitality and I had pause.
Yeah, I was going to say you've got your balancing vow of pause, which is an
beautiful
active
foil.
pursuit of.
Yep. So they beautifully balanced each other. And I do think that the spaciousness, however that's created, and pause is one way to do that deliberately, is also necessary for deep hospitality, for not having the resentment of too many people, too many demands and so on. And simplicity as well. I wasn't buying stuff, and that takes time. And that
Focus,
also,
energy, desire, thought, money, resource. Yeah, it does use resource.
Planning.
Interesting. I am seeing, hearing, feeling a yes and movement in that your vow of hospitality, which is others focused and more outward leaning, your vow of pause, which is one's a giving more and one's a receiving more. It's not that they're mutually giving or receiving, but you're not saying I must be hospitable and I have no needs and I don't have space to care for myself. And you're not saying I must care for myself at all costs, even if I can't, I can't deal with those people. So there's, even as I think about, what Sam and I are exploring in this episode of collective responsibility and individual responsibility, is that they're so not mutually exclusive, that they're so woven together and possibly can't exist without the other. And yet if you pursue one to the detriment of the other, both suffer? Like, is that too simplistic to say that? I feel it's accurate to a degree.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really fascinating question about the way those two things play off one another. I resist the term self-care because I think
and
that...
self-love.
And self-love. I definitely resist the term self-love because I think partly with the self-care notion, because I do think some forms of caring are the necessary activities to allow yourself to contribute. And I suppose I'm a bit suspicious of it being stretched so far that it becomes, for want of a better word, self-indulgence. So self-care, cleaning your teeth, eating food, sleeping, those are just keeping the engine going. And you definitely will break at some point if you don't attend to those things. Now, one of the things I do think and discovered during that year when I got into a super busy, intensive period is I also think as human beings, sometimes we do just let ourselves go. We get stressed, we get overworked, our house becomes messy. All of these things, that's also part of life because you can't control exactly the movement of your life. Like, that's not being a person. Being a person is being in relationship, and sometimes it'll get too much. But if that goes on chronically year after year after year, I think you also start to make mistakes. I find if I'm...
You make mistakes when you are...
For want of a better word, stressed, busy, overwhelmed.
Why would we want better words than stressed, busy and overwhelmed?
Good question. No reason.
Okay.
They're perfectly good words.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, they're perfectly good words. I know for myself...
Yes.
Because I'm head of the School of Psychology at the moment, it's a very intensive middle management role. Mm-hmm. If I am able to be in a space of spaciousness, of where I am able to listen and absorb what the person is saying, but still hold to the school as a whole, the principles I work by and everything, I can do a pretty good job in that interaction. If I feel caught out, if I am tired, if I'm thinking about something else, I will do a pretty bad job in that interaction. So it goes back to what you were saying about these being inseparable, the collective and the individual focus being inseparable, if you like.
Yeah, and look, it's fascinating because, you know, we can kind of rip open a way of being in the world, which is like you read Four Agreements and you kind of, you close that book, and I find it fascinating what you highlighted in that book in terms of it centered the self as sort of the source of all success and wellness. And we've got self-care as a branded economic, purpose-driven option pursuit for the whole of your life. It's like the Project Petra, the Project Niki, you know, and that is ultimately, and I think we've discovered it, unfulfilling and unrealistic and odd. It's like quite an odd concept that I would spend all my energy and focus on making myself the best me I can be. And yet we do it subconsciously all the time, right? So for me, it's this orientation away from, I love getting older. This is one of the things I love about getting older. It's an orientation away from the relentless pursuit of success or perfection or fulfillment, an end goal as far as myself is concerned, and the pursuit of walking with compassion, with kindness, with things like love and humility and purpose at times, like allowing things that are valuable to be present in the path that I'm taking, and it will wend. So all of that to say, it's what seems like a good idea, which is forget your own needs and serve only this good cause, or forget everybody else's demands and serve only your personal fulfillment. They're both hollow. Like they're both false at their extremities. How do we draw towards this?
It's funny because I was having... Sorry if I interrupted.
No, you didn't.
I was having a conversation with a friend, and she said, "Oh, you don't like self-care, do you?" And I said, "No, I don't like that." And we talked about it a little bit. And then I said to her, "You know what? I think it's because I just do self-care without worrying." Yeah. And maybe... Yeah, so maybe that's part of being an introvert, actually. Yeah. Like it never occurs to me to say compromise on my sleep for much more than one night or two. I just don't do it. Yeah. I never don't exercise. People say, "Oh, I'm too busy to run," or something. I'm like, "Oh, okay, right." I just see running like cleaning your teeth. I mean, I'm slightly exaggerating. I might go maybe 4 days without exercising because I am busy. But I almost feel like something in me is just oriented towards the basics of keeping myself well in a way that I don't actually think about.
Genius. So that's such a good awareness to have, because when I read your book, I would say your ability to care for yourself is brilliant. You feed yourself nourishing things, you exercise your mind and your body, you maintain healthy social relationships, you are curious and open to discovering a new ideology. And so your ability to care for your needs as a human seems profoundly good. I'm shit at it. Like I reward myself with exercise if I've done enough work. Wow. Is my orientation to it. Sleep, I've only just discovered the joy of sleep in so much as my husband's encouraged me to get more of it, and it turns out I'm a nicer person with it. Like all sorts of things where I'm like, oh, my orientation is so away from healthy care of my human needs. Like I just for an example, when your eyesight fails, not only can it be hard to see the chins on your hair, the hairs on your chin. As my eyesight has failed, it becomes harder to see the hairs on my chin, which are of no health consequence at all. But I don't want lots of dark hairs just poking under my chin. But you also can't see your blocked pores on your nose. And so my daughter went like this to me last night and sort of scraped my nose. And I'm like, oh, yes, that's right. I have to look at my nose occasionally with glasses. And I did a clay mask on my face for the first time in my life on my own. And I would consider it to be self-care or maintenance. I've no idea, but I know young people, my daughter included, who will do nourishing, enjoyable things for and with their bodies. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. How do you even do that? But it's again this, if somebody calls me, it doesn't matter if I'm supposed to be sleeping or eating or thinking about something else. I am there for that person. That's my orientation as others.
Do you think that's a personality trait, or do you think that's being brought up with that as an expectation?
I think it's nature and nurture. I think it's a personality type and a family of origin. Yeah. Development. So I love sitting opposite you today and hearing that to meet your human needs is something that is a given.
Yeah, I would say it is.
Yeah. And it's worth knowing that, because out of that you can move to service of others. And
I was going to say, I think, without meaning to sound not modest, I don't have very strong material needs, for example, or very strong needs for accolades and success. I'm a professor at the University of Auckland, so I get it. I have made it. But I don't quite have that edge that some people do, and that I think leads them in some cases to not look after themselves in the way they're talking about. So I guess, because my simplicity vow, for example, where I was able to not buy anything for the year, was so easy, I didn't even notice it. People have written whole books about not buying anything for a year, and I think, what did they write about? Because it was just absent, essentially, from my life. So I think a little bit of it for me is that there's some of those things, and I'm totally not talking about you here, Petra, but I'm just thinking in the university context in which I operate, there's certain kinds of desires that people will pursue that do compromise self-care, I think, that haven't strongly attracted me.
The pursuit of excellence or success or accolades.
Lots of those kind of things.
And that require you to potentially forgo human needs.
And also, I don't actually want to be negative about those things, because I think to produce something of genius sometimes does take a kind of compromise that potentially I'm not up for.
I hear you. Yeah, fascinating. So speaking of, you don't know what somebody who didn't buy anything for a year would write a book about. You have written a book about what you did pursue. Can you, I think people should buy the book and have a little read, or a big read. Can you, I guess, elucidate some of what you discovered in essentially creating and then serving a community as a secular priest?
Yeah, well, one of the very early discoveries is that I was essentially doing this for people like me, who I defined primarily as environmentally oriented, socially justice oriented, secular types. And I found that they were overwhelmingly not interested. Now, I did get people along to services. I did do number escapes me off the top of my head, but I think it was 49 personal conversations, something like that. And I did a ceremony. So there was some interest, but it was nowhere near on the scale I expected. I thought people would yearn for this because I thought I was onto something that was missing. And I did not discover that people in secular communities, they either didn't perceive the same gap or didn't think I was somebody that could fill the gap for them. I'm not quite sure exactly what that is. That will always remain a question. I also discovered the enormous warmth and generosity of Christians. Now, I was blown away by that because for me as an atheist and possibly growing up in a Christian country, there was you were either Christian or not, you either believed or not. That was a big thing in my time as a child. And it was always slightly embarrassing, this idea that I don't believe in this. How could you possibly believe in this? It's impossible. And when I just let that go and talked with Christians about their faith, I just discovered this. I hope this doesn't sound patronising or weird, but this whole world of poetry, sophistication, depth, honesty, self-reflection, humility, that was really quite new to me. So
quite a lovely discovery.
I know. I mean, I want to say, which sounds even more patronising, some of my best friends are Christians.
Same.
You know?
Doesn't sound the
Yeah,
same.
but I mean... And you know the other thing I discovered, which in a way I kind of could have known before, and you might comment on this, that a lot of people keep their Christianity secret because it's not very cool in some contexts.
So like one of the things, like as soon as you said you were either Christian or not, and you were like, you felt like, oh, you had this sense of I'm not and I don't believe, and there being a discomfort perhaps to that. I suspect so many Christians feel exactly the same. I am and I do believe, and there's a discomfort to that because the perception could be in a scientifically oriented age that you're stupid or that this is ridiculous or foolish or idiotic or any other kind of word like that. And so, yes, a lot of people, I think because of stereotypes, because of perhaps some of the mainstream narratives around Christianity, do keep their beliefs private.
Yeah, I think also in the circles I move in, there's a sort of double whammy in a way. There's the intellectual belief side of it, but there's also the narrative that Christianity was part of the sort of colonization movement and this oppressive force. So I think it's you know what's interesting about that too is I think that because Christianity, and again, I know I'm bundling together a whole lot of very different things, but sort of liberal Christianity, for want of a better term again, because it is now not the go-to thing that's just part of community life. Yeah. It has to find a humility in the message. Yeah. And that's one of the things I found so amazing about the contrast between an incident of the culture wars at my university when positions were taken on, in this case, Mataranga Māori and science and how that works. They were such rigid positions and so much defensiveness, whereas when I was talking with people who had leadership roles in the Christian church, the lack of defensiveness just blew me away. The generosity of people to say, this is how I see God and this is the role of Jesus in my life, but other people see God differently. That is such an incredible thing to say in this polarised age, and yet it's so simple.
And there's some profound truth in how people behave when they're no longer the dominant or incumbent.
Yeah.
There is a humility that comes with that I think is entirely appropriate and good.
Yep.
And to to lay down defensiveness is to lay down the need to be right and to rule. And so I think that is an important part of what I would perceive to be a life of faith or a religious life, is that the humility of not knowing everything and being the arbiter of all the rules. Yeah, it's simple and hard at times to be human, isn't it? It is. So it is such an incredible journey, for want of a better word.
You're picking up my phrases. I actually could have called this book like humility or something like that, like humility and sitting with uncertainty. Those are such central things that I was both inspired by and kept returning to.
Yeah. Was there a book in all your, like I've got notes about the Eugene Peterson book you wrote and Taylor's book and not Taylor Swift and Karen Armstrong's.
Can we just redo that sentence?
Yeah.
The Eugene Peterson book you read.
Oh yeah, read. Wrote. Oh, I said wrote. Yeah, okay. I've got. You obviously did a lot of research again as part of the project and read books by Eugene Peterson, by Karen Armstrong, Cynthia. How do you say her surname? Bourgault. Fantastic. Charles Taylor. There we go. Was there a book that stood out to you? Oh, Richard Rohr. You read his work.
Well, Richard Rohr was probably the standout writer for me because he has this extraordinary ability to write in a way that never caused me those jarring moments that some other Christian writers would. So I would find huge beauty in Eugene Peterson, for example. Like, I think he's so much wisdom. But there'd be these moments where he would talk about the elements of Christianity that they're just not me, you know. So Jesus is a special holy person over and above all others, for example, is just not the world I live in. Whereas Richard Rohr, he manages to have this incredible compassion, and he's a Catholic priest, but he's still...
Old white guy.
Yeah, an old white guy.
Yeah.
But my goodness, does he leave the door open? Mm-hmm. He always leaves the door open. So I would read him and I would feel such a opening in myself towards something bigger and more generous. And I almost never heard him contradict himself, like maybe a factual contradiction or whatever, but there's something incredibly consistent about his, we've got to remember that he is a Catholic priest. He does have a very simple life in that way. There's not, we were talking about celibacy before, not the draw of things like family, which might have allowed him to get into what seemed to me a deeply spiritual place. So I love his writing.
Brilliant. When you speak of a deeply spiritual place, for you, does such a place exist?
That is a good question. I think so. I think there's a space in which the metaphor that comes to mind is that the world blows through you. And actually, as we're talking, I hadn't thought about this, but there's a piece of my book where, right near the end, where I'm doing a meditation with a friend, and I had the sense that she was porous, that everything was blowing through her. It was very light, and it felt very profound, but I didn't know what it was. But I think that's what I mean.
And in essence, we don't have to know what everything is, do we?
No.
We can experience a porous, spacious moment where the world blows through and not have to nail it down or fully contain or comprehend or even be able to verbalize it. I think that's an experience that exists. Yeah, it's kind of fabulous.
On a more ordinary level, I love
ordinary.
Karen Armstrong, by the way. Okay. And I suppose I identify with her.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is where one voice is not required. We don't require one voice to be the ultimate authority, do we?
No.
Like Eugene Peterson has good things to say and so much wisdom. You relate to Richard Rohr on this or Karen Armstrong in that way. I love the multitude of voices that are available and who may speak or relate or reveal something to different people. I think that's part of the tapestry of community even. And returning to that sense of you beginning this project out of a desire to pursue social justice and service and the environment, to care for the environment. Were there things that you felt and or discovered or in this project that really worked to bind or support or help community or inspire hope to carry on caring for the world in the face of difficulty or caring for other people in the face of, difficulty?
I think there is a substantial piece around language. Mm-hmm. I think there is something about the words and the concepts, the poetry that brings these moments. I experienced a lot of that at Rhythms of Grace, which was the church that I attended. Often that poetry was accompanied also by being in the company of others who were silent and listening. I think silence and company is a very powerful thing, a beauty and attention to the environment. So there's something in language that I think is essential. And one of the tragic flaws of my project, and I think the secular enterprise, is that it's not easy to replace God. It is not easy to replace the poetic likeness and the gravitas of God. And yet God is a word. It's a language. It's a way that people can talk to each other. So I experience that, and I still try and create language that does some of that in my own way. Again, as head of school, when I write or have staff meetings, I'm searching constantly for the words that will honour and acknowledge the people we are, but be always pushing out towards the communities we serve. So I think language is a big one. I think the shedding, simplicity, I don't want to say minimising, but being really careful about your material presence in the world.
Intentional.
Yeah, being really intentional about that, and trying not to overload your life with desire for material objects. I think that's really important too. Because another thing that I discovered is how generous Christians are with their money. How generous Christians are with their money. You'll forgive these kind of phrases, won't you?
No, they are. Thank you. No, they are remarkably generous. I work in I hold on to your thought, but I work in lots of NGO, non-government organisations and charity spaces, and there's this idea that you can recruit the vast majority of people who are not people of faith to give, and yet it turns out it's easier to recruit people who practice giving. And part of the faith practice of Christianity is to give, whether it's your time, your attention, your worship, your prayer, your finances, resources. It's baked into the way of being, and you actually can get more out of lots of poorer Christians than you can out of lots of wealthier non-Christians.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah,
I believe it.
So
I believe it. It's just
your stereotype is accurate.
So I think the material simplicity has a huge role to play here.
Okay.
I think we understate it, both actually in churches and in environmental movements. I think it's almost like the great hidden secret, the revolution we don't talk about, is having less stuff, travelling less, eating simpler food, all of those kind of things.
Interesting. Growing your own food. Yeah, probably a resolution for a few things. I have been told that we have gone over 45 minutes by my producer, so I will look for my last question, if I have one. I possibly don't. Maybe a quote, because I'd underlined things. You had a conversation with Barry, and
Yes.
you and Barry have the same dilemma. We
Yes.
needed to be conventional enough. Excuse me. We needed to be conventional enough to care for our families while keeping in focus the common good and the state of our planet. And Barry was caught in a web of conflicting expectations that he be true to his environmental roots, provide for his children, and contribute to solving the collective problems that we all face, without a God to do something outstanding. It's a conundrum.
It is. It is. It is. And it's one, as I say in that passage, that I could simply see. I could accept the truth of everything he said and had nothing to add, actually. I think I had
The limits of a secular priest.
And coming into this project, I'd actually expected those kinds of issues, that kind of tension in environmentalists to be the core of what the project was. But it turned out not to be. It turned out not to be.
The core of the project for you was?
The core of the project for me was finding the possibility of being in the world in a slightly different way. Almost like you're doing the same things you were, but there's just this slight tweak on your perspective to it. The slight, both standing back and being more open and generous. And goodness, speaking the truth. One thing I was struck by at Rhythms of Grace is the way people die. They don't pass away. And that just struck me. It's like such a strange observation, because the atheist world has this idea that faiths are about not seeing things as they are.
Avoiding reality and hardship.
And I found exactly the opposite. And I think facing the truth of ourselves is ourselves and the needs of our world, our planet, is how we go forward.
Beautiful. Thank you, Niki.
Thank you, Petra.
Thank you for chatting for longer than scheduled and for writing this book. It's so interesting, so fantastic. How's it been received by colleagues?
It isn't published yet.
Ooh.
It's not out until March the 12th.
We
So
have yet
you
to
got an
find out.
advance copy.
Yay. And I'm so glad you got to use your provocations again.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good. You went to the effort of crafting them and you deliver them to the small audience, as you say. Yeah. It's amazing how different ways humility arrives, right? We think I will humble myself, and then we are humbled by the project that we are doing.
Yeah.
Like it's profound and good and better than we could have planned, and worse.
Yes.
And all the things, right?
Yes,
More delightful
absolutely.
and more dreadful and more wonderful and more awesome.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.